Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. This is the mid-month update which covers both Moon Knight and Elektra, but for the purposes of this video I'm only going to be covering Moon Knight. As many people speculated from the teaser earlier on last week, I believe Moon Knight got his T4, and I was actually lucky enough to get his potential unlocked after just 2 days, so after the patch dropped yesterday and finishing the potential today. So as a result of that, I obviously tested the difference between him at level 70 and him at level 72 and then 80, just to show you guys what kind of a difference the level upgrades make. As for first impressions, the uniform looks amazing, but the uniform skills don't really have too many visual effects that tie into the show, which is a little bit disappointing since there could be potential for some really great visual effects onto the skills, such as maybe Konshu or even him moving the night sky or something like that, but there isn't really any of that, so that's unfortunate. In addition to that, the uniform alone isn't at the very top tier for a PvE character. It is pretty good, but it does fall a little bit behind to some of the most recent uniforms that have come out. However, with that said, the uniform is a good upgrade from the previous one. Whether that's a good investment for most people, I'm not sure, but that's what the video is for, so you can decide for yourself. To get the most accurate testing, I actually removed my custom gear so that the procs missing or hitting at certain times wouldn't skew the numbers too much, and it would give you the most consistent and accurate results for how the character performs with the old uniform and the new uniform. I do add a proc later on in the testing, but I mentioned that specifically in those parts. The current build that I'm running obviously has the no proc, but also no Odins, no artifact, and just 6-star mythic Urus for damage. With no leadership and support, I'm able to finish stage 9 of Null with the old uniform with roughly about 40 seconds left. I found that the new uniform is about a 1-minute improvement from the old one, and another good benefit of the new uniform is that the third skill now has a much wider window when you can cancel the skill and transfer that proc, as well as get the damage from the third skill. With the old uniform, when you use the third skill, you had to cancel it at a very precise time in order to pass the proc that was on the third skill to the other skills, while also getting the benefit of the grenade explosion damage. The timing and the range for the new third skill is a lot less sensitive and finicky, so you are less likely to miss your procs and transfer that proc from the third skill. Besides that, the character is a little bit tankier with the new uniform because the fourth and fifth skill is a full iframe, meaning that you're also less likely to get interrupted by the opponent because the old uniform wasn't an iframe and you basically just sit there till the boss does some kind of skill that is either an iframe itself or can interrupt you from using your fourth skill. As you saw from that last clip, I had a clear time of roughly around 1:20 to 1:30 seconds, which isn't really the best for a modern uniform. It's okay or good, but for my account, usually a character that can clear it with about 2 minutes or more remaining with no damage proc is on the higher level for a PvE character. Just as a reference, I was able to clear the stage 9 of Null with about the same setup with 2 minutes remaining with Hawkeye, and for this stage I was able to clear it with about a minute remaining with Hawkeye. Whereas for Moon Knight, I actually don't finish it, but it's close enough that I would say I basically finished with no time remaining. If you're going to run the character specifically for PvE, you do have a good amount of options for PvE builds. You can either use a CTP of energy or destruction since he is very proc friendly, and because he does have that guard break immunity built into his kit, you can also run a rage, but he doesn't have guaranteed crit rate. However, you can get that using Taskmaster since that's one of the benefits that he provides to Weapon Master tagged characters. If you're wondering which one of these to pick, generally speaking, a CTP of energy should give you the best output in content like World Boss Legend, and then for score-based modes, a CTP of rage should be the best there since it does give you a bit more flexibility and you can do more things like delay canceling your 6th skill and things like that. So that would be Squad Battle and Alliance Battle Extreme. Oh, and also if you use the character for things like Dispatch or Dimension Rifts, And then lastly, a CTP of Destruction should give you a bit less performance in PvE, but allow you to use the character in PvP to some extent, specifically Alliance Conquest. Keep in mind though that the CTP of Energy can also function, but you are trading that penetration for things like Ignore Dodge and Chain Hit Damage. To see how far I could push the character, I gave him a mighty CTP of Energy with about 5% Pierce on the top proc, and the rotation that I went with was 3, Delay Cancel, 4, Cancel 5. Make sure you wait a little bit for him to jump to Delay Cancel, otherwise you miss the damage from the Grenade Explosion. Then you want to go directly into your 4th skill and cancel that into the 5th skill, because if any hits land from the 4th skill, then the proc that is on the 3rd skill won't carry over all the way to the last skill that you want to proc the CTP on. From there, once you get your Awakening skill, the rotation that I used was 5 cancel, 3 delay cancel, again wait for the little jump back, 4 cancel, 6. You can wait out the rest of the proc on the 6th skill, or if you want to squeeze out more damage and do a little bit of a more advanced rotation, once you have 2 seconds left on your CTP proc, immediately go into 2 cancel 1, and then when your 3, 4, and 5 are back off cooldown, immediately do the 3 delay cancel, 4 cancel 5 in order to get the damage while the 6th skill is still running. By doing this, it allows you to get another rotation in where you're proccing on the 5th skill while the 6th skill has been effectively delay cancelled and the damage from it is still going in the background. You unfortunately won't get the proc from the 3rd skill to transfer over to the 5th skill this time, since the hits from the 6 will immediately remove it, but you should end up getting more damage this way than just waiting for the 6th skill to finish. You can see from the finish time that the mighty CTP of Energy shaved off about 1 minute and 30 seconds from the run. Since that stage is pretty low and I need to compare the character once I take him to higher levels on a higher stage, I also took him into a stage 29 of Mephisto, and with that, I wasn't able to clear it, but again, it was so close that it's basically a clear with no time remaining. Because yesterday's giant boss raid boosted combat types, I decided to see how he would fare there, and surprisingly enough, I actually did really well with him, finishing with 4 minutes and 15 seconds left. I can't tell you if Rage would be better in this mode since I haven't tested it, but you can see that the energy clearly does work pretty decently, so if you want to use the character for World Boss Legend and Giant Boss Raid, then that's likely your best option. Unfortunately, due to the current restrictions of the day for Alliance Battle Extreme, I wasn't able to test him there, so instead I took him into a squad battle and was able to almost hit 10 million on my first try with an energy. Because a rage build generally does better in score-based modes, if you were to use a rage, I'm pretty sure that you could score higher, and the fact that he can go to T4 means that he will undoubtedly be the meta character for the Combat Hero Day restriction for Alliance Battle Extreme. Some people mentioned that Moon Knight lost silence from his kit, so he won't be viable for one of those weeks. But due to the way that the Striker option works for the T4, you can basically just slot in any kind of character skill that has the effect to do the roar cancel for the Frost Beast. The unfortunate side is that you do have to take that character to T4 to get that effect, so in a way it kind of limits the character when it's not at T4, but you do have that option regardless. This is kind of one of the weird and not so great things about the uniform, is that the uniform itself is an upgrade from the previous uniform, as you saw about a minute, but it isn't really up there with some of the best uniforms for PvE. However, once you start upgrading the character past level 70, you'll see the huge spike in damage and the benefits that he gets from the uniform and the upgrades combined. So saying this, it's a little bit of a conundrum because I'm not sure what the balancing point is for the devs, whether it is the uniform at level 70 or the uniform at level 80, because if the uniform at level 70 is average, it'll be amazing at level 80. However, if a person doesn't take the character to level 80, then comparing that uniform to other uniforms makes it so the uniform is basically just average and might not even be worth picking up. Basically what I'm trying to say is that with the future updates, I hope that the uniforms aren't heavily scaled back in favor of taking the character to their highest upgrade in order to make up that difference. If you kept track of the previous clear at level 70, the level 72 essentially shaved off another minute from the clear time. However, that stage 19 fight is fairly quick, so it doesn't really fully encompass how much of an improvement I got. To see that, I obviously did the stage 29 of Mephisto fight again, and I actually had an improvement of about 2 minutes and 42 seconds, which is absolutely massive. And then once I took the character to level 80, I got a 3-minute improvement, which probably could have been higher if I refined the rotation a little bit more. I can't really put into words how insane of an upgrade that is, just taking the character up 10 levels. I haven't touched the gears, and I obviously haven't done the T4, so I haven't gotten the stat bump or the skill that gives me an additional 70 to 110% additional damage. This is why I was mentioning the balancing point before, because at level 70 the uniform is definitely good. It's not bad. It's probably not as big of an upgrade as people might have hoped, but it's definitely good. However, at level 80, the improvement that you get from the uniform gets stretched out even more, since the spike damage and all the other effects seem to accumulate to give you a much bigger benefit. Funny enough, I actually had a worse performance in Giant Boss Raid, but that's because the day switched to the speed benefit, I believe, so Dormammu's type is combat and I have no type advantage. So my clear time is about a minute slower than when I did have the type advantage. I'll obviously have to test again when the combat type advantage rolls around, and I probably expect to see about a minute improvement during that day, so from 4 minutes remaining to about 5 minutes remaining. And if I did this clear when I had level 70, I probably would have been about a minute slower than this. This also goes to show you that type advantage plays a big role here, so for any characters that you use for Dormammu, make sure to also upgrade their type enhancement as high as you can. Over in squad battle, I managed to get 400,000 more points by getting to level 80, which allowed me to go up to the 10 million mark and finish with 10.2 million. Again, with the CTP of Rage, the character likely would have scored higher and will more than likely cap out in ABX and could possibly do the same in squad battle too. I noticed during the patch notes that some people were panicking that he had a 1-second buff in his T4, but the 1-second buffs are usually always aura buffs that constantly refresh, and for Moon Knight's case, he gets about 10 ticks or 10 refreshes of that buff during the T4 duration. I can't test exactly how the aura buff works, but it does say that it only applies to self. However, in most cases in the game, aura buffs that apply only to self can also be passed off to allies, so it could mean that the T4 benefits your other characters, which means that it would make a significant difference in modes like Dispatch. Speaking of Dispatch, we can now run 2 level 80s with White Fox's lead, which more than likely will be the fastest clear of any character combo. I finished stage 10.4 in the fastest time that I've ever cleared it, which is almost 60 seconds flat. I then cleared the last stage of Dispatch with almost a minute remaining, and one of the added benefits of taking Moon Knight to level 80 is that you can also get the last challenge for 12.5 if you haven't gotten it already. That requires you to clear it with 3 combat types. I did it with Sif lead and Valkyrie support, though you can also potentially do something like a Blade leadership with Valkyrie or Sif support. However, the timing will still be close if you're running a single skill damage proc instead of rages on these characters. I also tried Moon Knight in timeline, though I didn't test him too thoroughly since I had challenger buffs, and because I was basically running a CTP of energy and wasn't really expecting him to do much in that mode. He won't really have any use for you in timeline, but in Alliance Conquest he could have some pretty good burst damage off the start, since he usually opens with his 5th or 4th skill, and both of those are full iframes. So if you run something like a CTP of Destruction, that penetration and quick burst damage might be able to nab you a few kills. I'll do some more testing when the challenger buffs reset, but from what I saw, he is sort of like the lesser version of Blade, because his iframe skills have a long windup before the damage is done, and the healing is attached to a passive which is longer than the skill itself, meaning that he heals less than Blade because Blade will deal damage and heal at the same time. Overall, I don't think this uniform is a must-have. It's mostly going to be for people who want to push higher stages of World Boss Legend, or for those who want a kind of more consistent clear time in Giant Boss Raid Dormammu. It's still yet to be seen whether the new uniform will be able to reach the max score in Alliance Battle Extreme, but if people can do that with the old uniform, then that's even more reason why this one isn't really a necessity. It's a little bit unfortunate that I can't recommend this uniform since it does look great, but when I tested this uniform with Elektra's new uniform, Elektra actually outperformed Moon Knight at level 70 with no proc, which is a little bit strange since Moon Knight is designed for PvE and Elektra performs better than Moon Knight in PvP since she has PvP options in her toolkit. In fact, here is a quick peek at some of the content that's going to be featured in the next video, which will cover Elektra and shows how she does in timeline with my first test. I'm currently running a CTP of regen on her, and I do have those challenger buffs unfortunately, so I have to test when the buffs reset on Thursday. But as you can see, she is capable of taking out some of the top metas, even though her AI rotation is a little bit wonky and doesn't utilize all the best options in her toolkit. So this ties back into the grievances that people might have with Moon Knight's uniform, which is that why is he designed for PvE when Elektra's is designed for PvP and can do PvE better than Moon Knight at level 70. Anyways, that rounds out the video for Moon Knight. I have also done the testing for Elektra, but I have to wait a day or two for the timeline reset to really test her out. So make sure to check out that next video if you're interested in that. I do put some work into these videos, so if you do enjoy them, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share them with your friends. As always, I appreciate the time you take to watch these, but the video is now over.